Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our town hall conversation hosted by Spirit Crossing Clubhouse, the Arc of Larimer County, and Foothills Gateway. I'm Ann Hutchison. I'm the president and CEO of the Fort Collins Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm honored to be your MC today. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The first is that closed captions are available. If you're on a computer, you should be able to see a small CC button in your Zoom controls. Click on that to turn on your subtitles. If you're on a smartphone, the captions should show up automatically. And a special thanks to our typists today. We're very appreciative of being able to offer closed captioning today. We invite all of our guests to type questions on issues that you're having into the chat box. We'll try to diagnose those behind the scenes. At the same time, we certainly want to encourage you to use the Q&A box as well as the chat box to submit questions to our guests today or to our panelists. Additionally, if the chat box or the Q&A box is not working for you, you can absolutely submit a question directly to the following email, and that is events@foothillsgateway.org, and we'll pull those in as we can. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing it publicly through the organizations that are hosting at a later date. We are super excited to get started and to have the panel that we do today. They are your area representatives and leaders, and we're so appreciative of their time. Joining us today, we have District Attorney for the 8th Judicial District, Gordon McClaughlin. We have State Senator for District 15, Rob Woodward. We have State Representative for District 52, Cathy Kipp. State Representative for District 53, Andrew Bosnecker. We have Larimer County Commissioner for District 1, John Kefalas, and Larimer County Commissioner for District 3, Jody Shadduck-McNalley. So a great team in front of us. We do have an invitation out to Congressman Neguse. We'll keep an eye out, and if he's able to pop in, we'll pull him over. But certainly we've got an amazing team here today that we are so happy to have with us, and look forward to their comments today. Our real focus today is health and human services for individuals navigating mental health challenges, as well as those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our agenda is that we have provided to our panelists 2 questions ahead of time. We'll have them each respond to the questions, and especially with the first question, we'll have them do a brief introduction so that you can get to know these important people in our community. You'll note that I have a timer above my head, panelists. We are looking to keep you on track with 2-minute answers. So once you start, I'll hit the go button, and when you see it get to all zeros, you know that your time is up. We just want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share some insights today. Let me see, I'm checking my to-do list, and I think that's it. So let's get right to it. Again, we're thrilled to have all of our guests joining us as attendees today, as well as our panelists. So our very first question for our esteemed panel is, what have you done to reach out and hear concerns from constituents living with disabilities, mental illnesses, and addiction? And of course, we would love to have you do just a brief introduction in addition to your comments relative to that question. We'll start off with our district attorney. So Gordon, I will give you the floor.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for everyone for tuning in and making the time to hear about these issues, which are important to us here at the Day's office, and I know to all the other panelists here as well. My name is Gordon McClaughlin. I'm the district attorney for the 8th Judicial District, which is all of Larimer and all of Jackson counties. And here in Larimer, we have offices in Fort Collins and in Loveland. And I took office in January of this year, 2021. So I've been in office about 9 months and have been really enjoying serving all the people of Larimer County, and appreciate this opportunity. These are really important issues to us in the criminal justice system. Folks with disabilities, mental health struggles, substance abuse, they are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. There's no question about it. And so we are trying to figure out here in our first year what needs to be done to reduce those disparities in the criminal justice system and find people the right avenues. One of the ways we're doing that is making sure that not just myself, but all of our attorneys, because we have 40 attorneys here that are making independent decisions, executing justice in our community, understand those issues. And so we've had a lot of conversations in our office about what that means and what our role is. We have some what we call problem solving courts, wellness court, drug court, DUI court. And one of the first things I did back in January was put a new DA in that problem solving court that was really passionate about these issues and helping folks in our community, and asked him to relay that information back to the rest of our team so that they understand what's going on. So he sends an email that talks about the graduations of folks from wellness court, what their challenges were, what resources they needed to make them successful, and what they're doing now upon graduation to be contributing members of the community. And so that's sort of gotten that information back to everyone in our office and created a great culture of understanding of some of those issues.
Thank you so much, DA Mclaughlin. We appreciate those insights. We'll move next to Senator Rob Woodward. I know that Rob's in the car, so we might not get his image, but would love to have you introduce yourself and share some thoughts relative to what you've done to reach out and hear concerns from constituents living with disabilities, mental illness, and addiction.
You bet. Thank you so much. Thanks for having all of us here today, because these are important issues. My name is Rob Woodward. And by the way, I have pulled over to a safe place on the side of the road so that I can talk to you. I knew that my place in line was coming up. So I'm racing down to the Capitol. I serve on a committee that's charged with attacking the affordable housing crisis that we're faced with as a state. And I know that there's some overlap between some of the issues that some of this community faces with things like affordable housing. All these topics are pretty interrelated. My Senate district is Senate 15, which is all of Larimer County except the city of Fort Collins. So I cover Loveland, Berthoud, Estes Park, Wellington, and all of the great small towns in between, all the way up to the state line. And I just finished my third year down at the Capitol. One of the great things about the serving is the chance to meet with different groups and different people. So any chance that I get to reach out to or attend, veterans committees, some of the stuff that you guys are doing, fundraisers, we get lots of invites. So it's been great to get to go to those and learn from so many people what the issues are. Some of the things that we're facing in the Senate and at the legislature each year are things like some of the other things are like the Homestead Exemption for seniors and military folks. Every year, that's one of the top things on the chopping block as they try to balance the budget, and we fight year in and year out. I stand up and fight to make sure that we preserve that. We did some work around mental health treatment and that kind of thing. We got that bill through. As far as locally, sometimes it's just a matter of meeting one-on-one. Last night I had a chance to meet with a mom who had a special needs kid with a job coach, and she just couldn't find anything in today's environment for a place to help her son find a job. So I'm also blessed being a small business person that when I see a need, I'm able to tackle that. So for example, that young man is coming in for an interview this afternoon, and we hope to get him to work. I've been following Foothills Gateway for as long as I've been in Colorado, which is a little over 30 years now. We have friends who house some of the folks who are part of those programs, and I appreciate everything you guys do. I think my time's up.
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Senator. Appreciate your thoughts there. And again, look forward to having you join the conversation. Thank you for sharing those insights. Let's move on over to Representative Cathy Kipp. She again represents District 52. So Cathy, as you've heard already, but the question is, what have you done to reach out and hear concerns from constituents living with disabilities, mental illness, and addiction? And if you could provide a little bit of an introduction, that would be wonderful.
You bet. So I'm State Representative Cathy Kipp. I represent about half of Fort Collins. Now, the half that I represent is currently the east half, but as you might know, redistricting is going on, and now I might be representing the south half. We're going to figure that out over the next couple months, probably for sure. But anyways, Andy Basenecker and I are a team, and we together represent all of Fort Collins. So very fortunate to have him, having joined the legislature recently to work on these issues with me. So wanted to just say, one of the things that we as a legislature looked at when, a lot of the COVID money is coming into our state is we said, well, what can we do with one-time dollars, because one-time dollars are not ongoing dollars, to create transformational change, and what areas need it most? And there's really two big areas that we are addressing. And I just want you to know that one of those areas is the housing task force that Senator Woodward just talked about. The other area is mental health and behavioral health, which I think is really important. I know that anytime we get invitations, and it's really been tough during the pandemic because we haven't been doing as much in person, but anytime we have the opportunity to meet with our local groups, especially, Spirit Crossing or Arc of Larimer County or Foothills Gateway, I just love going to see your programs and talk to your folks. And we've also had the opportunity to go and visit with people over at Summit Stone and see what they're doing, as well as a number of the other organizations that really serve people who need to be served in our county. So anytime that you want to have a listening session, we do regular listening sessions as legislators. You're welcome to chime in on those. But if you have a group that just wants to sit down with legislators, we can always organize a Zoom call to make access easier. Or, we're happy to just sit down and find an outdoor patio these days, hopefully in warmer weather, to meet with you. So thank you for having us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Kipp. So we'll move on to Representative Boesnecker. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. And my name is Andy Basenecker. I'm the state representative for House District 53. And as Cathy mentioned, that's the west half of Fort Collins for now. And it looks like it'll be the north half of Fort Collins in the future. So looking forward to continuing that work. I was appointed to the state legislature in late April when Representative Arndt, now Mayor Arndt, was elected to be the mayor of Fort Collins. And it's been just an honor to be serving our community in this capacity. So looking forward to continuing that conversation and these conversations. I'll mention real briefly my background. I served for a number of years as Lutheran clergy. And in that capacity, I really had the privilege, I would say, of accompanying folks who are going through a number of different concerns, mental and behavioral health concerns, or folks living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And in that capacity, I really viewed my role as an accompanying role. So I would often, especially for folks with acute mental or behavioral health issues, accompany folks as they were, in the emergency room of Poudre Valley, or maybe they're placed on a 48-hour hold, really trying to provide supports and resources for folks who live with a constant set of challenges that I think a lot of us don't have to deal with. So I think in that capacity, it's been helpful because that informs my work then at the state legislature, just not only from a sense of empathy, but also a deeper understanding of some of the challenges that folks are facing in our community. And I'll just end with this. I've had the privilege on a number of occasions of touring the Spirit Crossing Clubhouse. I've had friends who work for Foothills Gateway, and I know what just an incredibly challenging time this last year and a half has been for folks, not only who receive support from those communities, but also folks who work behind the scenes to make those opportunities happen. So a word of thanks for everybody who has just really gone above and beyond over the last year and a half to make sure that folks in our community have the resources that they need in order to live their life that they would like to live. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative. Again, we appreciate you joining us today. Now we'll move on to our Larimer County Commissioners. We have two joining us, as you heard in the introductions. We have Larimer County Commissioner Cafalas, as well as Larimer County Commissioner Shadduck-McNalley. So why don't we start off with Commissioner Cafalas, sharing your thoughts and a bit of an introduction.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is John Kefalas, Larimer County Commissioner. I reside in District 1. The three commissioners, we represent the entire county. We are elected at large, but I do reside in District 1, which is the northern 1/3 of Larimer County. In response to the question, in terms of outreach to folks and engagement and all of that, I would offer the following. We have ongoing community conversations and town hall meetings. This is something that I've undertaken over the years, and so that's an opportunity to meet with folks and get a sense of what the issues are for them. We've also regarding the county budget and the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We have various surveys that are out there. We've developed a more user-friendly budget website, Budget Explorer, and there are these various interactive tools to get input from folks about how we should be using these COVID relief funds. Also, as has been stated, I think over the years I've tried to develop a relationship with the various organizations that serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and certainly co-occurring issues with mental health. And so I'm glad that I was able to participate in the annual employment event at Spirit Crossing Clubhouse and meet with folks. Another organization that I really am very supportive of is Dance Express. You know, that's kind of out of the mainstream, but Dance Express actually is a great opportunity for folks from all walks of life to engage. So I think my time is just about up, but basically, we're doing a lot, I think, to reach out, and I think Jody can speak to the behavioral health side of things as far as our impact funds and the things we are doing there to get input in our consumer advocacy group. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and we'll now turn it over to Commissioner Shadduck-McNalley.
Thank you so much, Ann. Good morning, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here today. I'm glad that my travel plans allowed me to kind of join in. I'm very super excited. I have attended this event in the past in person as just a constituent and resident. So I'm really glad to be here today representing you all as your Larimer County Commissioner. I live and reside in District 3, which is the southern part of the district. Behind me is Bierstadt Lake and Rocky National Park. So I'm a really proud hiker in Rocky National Park. But as Commissioner Cafalas shared, even though we run and serve in the districts that we live, the whole county votes for us. So I really feel I represent the entire county, and I'm really proud to say the first 6 months of office, I went to every extreme corner of the county. It was really exciting to visit all the different areas of the county. So I am a new commissioner, but I'm the first woman to ever serve in the seat, but I'm very proud of that. And I've been working really hard to get out and listen to folks, but I did that before as a resident and advocate for those in our community. I worked on the mental health initiative in 2018, and I'm proud to say I'm the liaison for the Behavioral Health Council. And so some of that work that we're doing at the Behavioral Health Council, we just increased our grants from $1 million to $2.5 million the last 2 years out into the community with these resources into different areas with those battling with addiction and mental illness. And there's a long list of those awards. There's almost 40 of those grant applications that were awarded just a couple of weeks ago, and would really like to go into that later at some time. You're always welcome to contact me to go into that. One thing about our Behavioral Health Council, Policy Council, is we have two subcommittees under that, which is a technical advisory, but also a consumer advocacy committee, which they like to call themselves a transformational committee. And they have people with lived experience on that committee that help advise us about where these funds should go. And we are going to be starting construction on that behavioral health center in December. So those are some of those areas. And then just thank you all for being here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. And While you were sharing your comments, our Congressman Joe Neguse was able to join us. So we've been able to move him over onto the panelist side of this event, and it looks like we have video. Welcome, Congressman. We are thrilled to have you here today. We're starting out with a first question for all of our panelists, and that is, what have you done to reach out and hear concerns from constituents living with disabilities, mental illnesses, and addiction? As well, we certainly want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience today. So I'd like to turn the floor over to you.
Sure. Well, good morning, and it's good to see all of you, of course, to be able to share the virtual stage with my colleagues, Commissioner McNalley and Commissioner Cafalas, and I see Representative Kipp and Representative Necker. I got closer, I think, than I did the last time. But I see Cathy Kipp smiling, so maybe I didn't. But and of course, our wonderful district attorney as well. And it's certainly a privilege to be able to join you for this important town hall, and always enjoy coming to this event in particular to be able to hear from all of you from the Arc of Larimer County and Spirit Crossing Clubhouse and Foothills Gateway about various issues that our community is facing in Larimer County, and ways in which we can be helpful at the federal level. Suffice to say that since the last time I was at this event a year ago, a lot has changed in Washington, D.C. It is a busy time in our nation's capital, where we are working to try to deliver for Colorado families through ultimately robust legislation and investments in our nation's infrastructure and federal funding for wildfire prevention, lower costs for paid leave, childcare, housing to support our communities, and of course, to your point, the need to help our community, those in the community who are disabled, and to make investments in mental health and physical health and behavioral health along the lines of which we really have not done at the federal level, certainly in a generation. And the consequential challenges really brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic have, in my view, kind of demanded an urgent and transformational response, which is what I think President Biden has attempted to do through his Build Back Better agenda. Of course, that started with the American Rescue Plan, which we know has ultimately inured to the benefit of Coloradans throughout our state. And we have our county commissioners and other local government leaders that are making important decisions about how to best expend those federal dollars, which we believe will, in part, I suspect, be connected to mental health investments and to investments for those in our community who are the most vulnerable. And I think that's an important part of the conversation that has been missing for quite some time, but I'm glad and certainly proud that it's part of the conversation that we're now having today as a result of these federal investments. Finally, I would just say, from my perspective, in terms of your specific question around engaging different communities in Larimer County, and in particular, the disabled community, our approach has always been to try to lead locally, which is to say to follow the lead of the communities that we have the honor of representing in the United States Congress. And that means being present, ubiquitous, right? Engaging with folks directly through our town halls, which we have many, and through other opportunities like this one to be able to connect directly with constituents and get a better sense from them about their needs, their desires, their priorities, so that we can ultimately be an effective advocate in Washington, D.C. And that's why conversations like this one are so important. We have a variety of different advisory task forces in our congressional office where we rely on community members to provide us with that direct feedback. And so to the extent that any of you are interested, those of you who are watching today's town hall or participating in that particular venue, would certainly encourage you to reach out to our office or come by to our Fort Collins office and let us know. And with that, I would turn it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your comments, Representative. We're going to come right back to you with our second question of the day, knowing that your calendar is extremely tight. Before I ask our next question, though, I do want to remind all of our attendees that this conversation is open to you. So I encourage you to drop questions either into the chat or the Q&A. Additionally, then, if neither one of those are possible for you, please do feel free to submit your questions to us at events@foothillsgateway.org. With that, we'll move on to our second question, and that is, what do you view as your role and the role of your office in ensuring the human rights of people living with intellectual and developmental disabilities or behavioral health conditions. How do you make sure they are protected?
Well, my job as a representative for the 2nd Congressional District is to work to secure the rights of each and every citizen in our wonderful community. And that certainly includes members of the disabled community, and ensuring that those folks with intellectual disabilities and challenges are just as well represented as anyone else. They are entitled to the same representation that every person in our wonderful community is entitled to. And I think that requires, on my part and the part of my staff, some intentionality in terms of how we approach these issues. And so a good example of this is in the discrimination context, right? We have a body of federal law that has existed for the better part of the last 60 years that protects those with a wide range of disabilities under federal law. But unfortunately, those laws have been chipped away over the course of really the last 30 years or so by federal courts. And the gains that were made, for example, by the enactment of the ADA back in the early 90s have unfortunately been not erased, but certainly have been hampered by some judges in different parts of our country that, in my view, are construing those laws in a way that doesn't comport with congressional intent. We have been very vocal and active in advocating for the strengthening of our discrimination laws, which include Title VII and the ADA, modernizing the ADA to better reflect the realities of living with a disability in the 21st century, which our laws don't necessarily do, again, particularly as they've been construed by the courts. I think that's one way, just by way of example, where our office can play a leadership role and has played a leadership role with respect to representing those folks in our community.
Thank you so much. I do want to give you, Representative, one opportunity. Again, I know that you're probably going to have to jump away from this conversation, but for any other closing comments you'd like to share with our audience, and then we'll work our way through our other panelists joining the conversation. Sure.
Well, I know, I've worked with each of our other panelists, and I know each of them to be individuals with a servant's heart and very, very focused on the issues that I know you all will be discussing today. So I look forward to hearing their comments as well. I will turn off my video, but we'll still be on. Unfortunately, I've got a committee hearing that is happening simultaneous to this town hall. So, but of course, it's the COVID world that we live in. And perhaps a good note to close on, which is that I recognize just how tough the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, has been on our community. And I think in particular, those who are participating on today's Zoom town hall. And I would just encourage you to stay hopeful about our future. I have every belief that we're going to turn the corner, that we have some light at the end of the tunnel with respect to this terrible pandemic. And we're not out of the woods yet, but we are getting closer and closer every day. And I hope that all of you are staying hopeful about the future. We have a very resilient and strong community that I think has remained strong and resilient, notwithstanding the challenges that we've faced as a result of this public health emergency. There's a lot that we still need to make progress on at the federal level. And I would certainly encourage you to reach out to our office and let us know about priorities that you have, bills that you think we ought to be taking a closer look at, or perhaps ideas and suggestions, solutions that you think we ought to be proposing. We are but the vehicle to ultimately accomplishing what you all believe we ought to be accomplishing at the federal level. And I certainly hope that you'll continue to take us up on that offer. So again, thanks for giving me the opportunity. My apologies that I couldn't stay for longer, but look forward to continuing the conversation in the days, weeks, and months ahead.
Thank you so much, Representative Neguse. We appreciate the time you were able to share with us today. So we'll move back to really the top of our order with our question. Again, the question that we're contemplating is, what do you view as your role and the role of your office in ensuring the human rights of people living with intellectual, developmental disabilities, or behavioral health conditions? How do you make sure that they are protected? So let's go back around the horn, as they say, and we'll start with our District Attorney, Mclaughlin.
Well, thank you. Congressman Neguse is always a hard act to follow, but I'll give it my best shot here. Historically, I think folks in the criminal justice system have wanted to believe that some of these other things aren't our problem in the criminal justice system, and that is very much not my belief. We prosecute cases here, but our mission is community safety and fair treatment of everyone in this community. And so part of that means looking at the holistic picture of what happened and trying to give that person the best ability to stop that behavior in the future. And especially when we're dealing with things like disabilities, behavioral health issues, often the answer to that is not punishment, but that is access to resources. I had the privilege of going up to actually the final session of wellness court for our longtime wellness court judge, Judge Field, who just retired last week. And the statements made to her, and I went up to say my thanks, but I was actually impacted much more by the statements of everyone in her court, the defendants, the clients of that wellness court, that were thanking the judge, hugging the judge, because they were given an opportunity. They were treated with respect. They were given resources, and they were given a chance to be a successful member of this community, which is what they wanted. And so by our office creating a culture and making offers to folks that get them to a program like Wellness Court or a program like Diversion, and we just launched a huge new expansion of our adult diversion program last week that is also aimed in a different way from the problem-solving courts at getting folks access to resources as an alternative to jail or other punishments. That makes a big impact on people, and that changes behaviors that allows people to change that behavior and keeps our community safe. So that meets our mission too. And we absolutely have an obligation as a district attorney's office to continue to look for more opportunities to do just that, because it does meet the essential mission that we have here.
Thank you so much for your comments. We'll move over to the State House and again, turn over the mic to Representative Kipp to share some thoughts.
Thank you so much. You know what? There is so much that we are trying to do at a state level to address these issues. I know during the COVID year, right, during 2020, we really were trying to what we call end the wait list for the IDD community. And unfortunately, instead of being able to do that, which was going to cost, quite a bit of money, but we were ready to make that investment and then buy it down over 5 years. I think it was going to be an extra 100 million a year over 5 years, or was it 20 million? Anyway, numbers fade. It's been a while, but we ended up making a lot of cuts that year. And I'm hoping that we are going to get back to the point where we are ready to finish buying down the wait list, because what that wait list does is it allows folks with IDD to live more full lives and to have better access to living those lives. I have to give a shout out. I used to serve on the school board, and I think the first time I attended one of your forums was when I was on the school board. But I think our school board, our school district does a really great job of with our programs like Cooper Home and Community Connections and projects, moving people into some of the other programs like Project Search. So I think it's sort of like an entire community of things we do. In terms of mental health, we've made it clear that physical health and mental health do have parity, that you have to offer people a yearly wellness, mental health wellness exam. So these are issues that are on our radar: mental abuse, substance abuse, mental health and substance abuse, and the challenges of our IDD community. And we are really working hard to make sure that we address those. And I just want to say real quick, I know my time's up, but Democrats and Republicans alike in our legislature understand that these are issues throughout our state and are really trying to take action to make positive change.
Thank you, Representative Kipp. Representative Baisnecker, other thoughts you would share?
Well, thanks, Ann. I have just a couple thoughts to share in regard to this question. First off, I think it's important for both myself and my fellow legislators to remember that the disability community is not a monolithic community. The challenges that folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities face vary from person to person. And it's important to really have that, I think, not only sense of empathy, but a really sense of understanding and a commitment to listen to the challenges that communities are facing as they really try to choose to live the life that they choose, right? And it's not up to us to choose that life. It's folks to be empowered to choose to live the life that they want to live. So in that regard, I wanted to just highlight a couple things that I think have anchor in the past year and a half. And that's first, the impact of COVID on students with disabilities, knowing that students with disabilities have been disproportionately impacted for a long time, but COVID has really exacerbated those learning gaps and availability of services to communities or folks with disabilities. The second is that I think an ongoing issue is equal pay for equal work inside of the disability community. And I think it's important that we do everything we can to really oppose sub-minimum wage for folks who are earning and contributing and working hard in our community and are an asset to the employers who employ them. Congressman Neguse touched on this a bit, but I think, the civil rights of folks with disabilities remain at risk. And I think in relation to our democracy, their participation in our democratic processes is key. And so it is a responsibility of mine, as I believe it is every legislator, to ensure that folks can participate freely and without barriers in our democratic process. So I wanted to mention that as well. And then lastly, is a core belief of mine that healthcare is a human right. And that means that folks shouldn't have to live in poverty simply to access the services that they require. And that includes home and community-based services that are challenging to get and have been especially challenging for folks over the last year and a half. So those commitments really inform my work. And as Representative Kipp mentioned, a lot of these issues are bipartisan issues where we all recognize that it's going to take all of us to solve these challenges and work with folks with disabilities in order to get to the bottom of what the real need is. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Basenecker. Appreciate those thoughts. Do want to let our attendees know, if you've just jumped on, Senator Woodward had to leave the call. He's listening in the background, but was on the road on his way to Denver to join an affordable housing conversation that I think we all believe he needs to be at. So he won't be able to answer our second question, but we certainly want to offer the question to our county commissioners and give them the opportunity to share some thoughts. Again, the question is, what do you view as your role and the role of your office in ensuring the human rights of people living with intellectual and developmental disabilities or behavioral health conditions? How do you make sure they're protected? And why don't we start again with Commissioner Cafalas?
Thank you, Ann. So in my role as a county commissioner and also as the chair of the State Board of Human Services, some of the ways that our responsibility to help advance human rights for persons with disabilities and people dealing with behavioral health issues include such things as, I think Andrew touched on this, the importance of making sure that people with disabilities have access to meaningful employment. So as part of our 5-year strategic plan, one of our objectives under Goal 2, Economic Opportunities, it deals with workforce development, and in particular, creating opportunities for folks with disabilities, to have meaningful employment. And we, as an example of that, we have a paid internship where someone is helping to develop films for the county. So that's one example. A second thing that I think is important as a county commissioner is that we recently approved, first time ever, an advisory board, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we'll be in the process of recruiting folks. And for me, it's been really important that at least one of those members, that 9 people on this board, would represent some of the interests of the disability community, of people struggling with mental health issues. But again, as Andrew said, it's not a monolithic community. There's a lot of diversity in there. The other thing I would mention is that we are getting ready to put out community grant applications for the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And I think it's important in terms of advancing human rights for all of all folks in our community, that people have access to resources and that they have opportunities to engage. The last thing as a county commissioner is that we're also in the process of making sure that our buildings, our county buildings, are ADA compliant. We did an assessment a couple of years ago, and we're making some progress on addressing those kinds of issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shadduck-McNalley, other thoughts?
Thank you, Anne. So it's hard to follow all these great folks that I'm so privileged to work with. But I'll just add on a little bit more. As I really want to echo what Representative Basenecker said, is, they're just everything that we're doing every day should inform our decision making and make sure that we're thinking of all the residents that we can. The guiding principle of our Larimer County is Larimer County will add value to the lives of its residents today and in the future by these 6 guiding principles. And some of those are being a fulfilling, enjoyable place to work, cultivating partnerships, empowering people, and just on and on. And so those inform our work on an everyday basis. And I feel that it is our every day we make decisions, we should always keep everyone in our minds to make sure everyone has access, basic human rights, because the county impacts everyone's daily life, whether it's transportation or health care, human services or behavioral health. Even the COVID pandemic, we've been trying to make sure the vaccines are accessible to everyone who would like to have a vaccine. And we've been going out into the community. So all of that work informs our daily decision. And we just had a conversation this week with Commissioner Cafalas, as he mentioned, or actually was last week, Commissioner Cafalas, where we talked about the workforce development and the ARPA funds and how we can make sure that we're engaging those folks with the IDD community that would like to have fulfilling work. So I feel that with this inclusion and equity, diversity, and inclusion commission that we just voted in, that came from the grassroots up. We knew we wanted this, but we let kind of that group come in with their ideas, and it came up to us with what they'd like to see as a grassroots group. And I think that will be great as we inform our work going forward to make sure that we're thinking about all these folks. And it is really a question that we ask, how are we reducing barriers? How are we increasing resources into our community? How are we, increasing access not only in our urban areas, but in our rural areas, and making sure that we are educating folks about the resources and opportunities that Larimer County offers. So that's kind of where I see our work on a daily basis. And thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Such thoughtful responses to our first 2 questions. And we want to remind our attendees that we're moving into the section of our conversation where you get to submit your questions. And we'll do these questions a little more round robin. I'll present the question coming from the audience and let you jump in as you would like. Again, we'd love to keep comments to about 2 minutes, just so everyone can share thoughts. But we have a wonderful question that's come in through the Q&A box. Again, you can use the chat, the Q&A, or you can email events@foothillsgateway.com or .org, sorry. And here's the question. Changes in employment are causing staffing shortages in our schools that impact students with disabilities. What can be done at the state, local, and federal levels to attract and retain paraeducators, teachers, and others who work with students with disabilities? Oh, go ahead, Representative Kipp. Yes.
Well, I'm going to jump in and just tell you that we've had a labor shortage in the special education area from even before the pandemic. And right now, with the labor shortages we're facing, the way I look at it, and read articles on it, and just sort of trying to figure out, where do we go?
So I think Representative Kipp just froze up. Are my other panelists seeing that as well?
Induce
Okay.
and really
there you
hard
go.
work for not. Was I not on? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you froze for a moment, but
Oh.
please feel free and go ahead with your comments about we were already facing a shortage ahead of time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, yeah, we were already facing a shortage. And I think, during this pandemic, we've, the shortage has gotten worse because people, frankly, don't want to come into our schools if they think they're going to be exposed. A lot of people, even if they're not immunocompromised themselves, may go home to people who are immunocompromised. And so the shortages have gotten worse. And we're at a point in our society where people are really reevaluating their work and what they do and what they're willing to work for. And ultimately, we're going to have to pay people more money to do the work that we need them to do, because working in our schools is hard work. It is not very well paid. We have some of the worst paid teachers in the entire country. And when you look at the classified staff who works with our folks, back when I was a parent in the schools and being really involved there, they said it was 2.4 classified people for every teacher, which means that we're not only paying our teachers badly, we're paying a lot of the people who are helping the people with disabilities in our schools even worse. Now, we don't have a good solution for that right now because we are very restricted. We actually have things on the ballot that are going to try and take money from public education this year. So please be careful about how you vote. But we need to be better as a state and the local community about trying to figure out how to cover these challenges. But basically, we need to pay people more, and we can't afford to do it right now. So it's a big conundrum.
Thank you, Representative. I see Representative Basenecker would love to jump in on this. We've had a couple of comments come in through the chat to where I'd love to expand this question to be not only our teachers, our para educators, and others in the school district, but we also have a comment in the chat noting that staff for direct services is equally challenging. So if you wouldn't mind broadening our question to include, what do we do about this staffing shortage, especially as it impacts our community with disabilities and mental health challenges? Go ahead, Representative Basenecker.
Well, thank you, Ann. And I want to just add on a couple things here. First, having served as I was a K-5 elementary school music teacher in a Title I school for a number of years. And so my gratitude to all those folks who work with our learners who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, because they really are an incredible asset to our entire community. And so a word of thanks, because I know the last year and a half has been incredibly challenging. And I don't have much to add on as far as the challenges that we face as far as funding education in Colorado. I think Rep. Kipp touched on that perfectly. I would just put in a plug, though, however, as we expand out the question, to note that I think, direct service providers, healthcare providers, these folks have seen an unprecedented situation over the last 2 years. And I think, the situation with the Delta variant really compounds that. So I think one thing we can do in support of folks who really do that direct interface with folks who have intellectual or developmental disabilities, folks who are working with people with behavioral and mental health challenges, I think the one thing we can really focus on there is to do everything we can personally as well to make sure that we blunt the impact of this Delta variant. And that includes wearing your mask, getting your vaccine as quickly as possible, and understanding how you can be the best neighbor to the folks in our community to make sure that folks who need these vital services don't have a barrier in front of them that shouldn't exist due to our community's impact from this COVID-19 virus. So thanks for my opportunity to chip in there.
Thank you, Representative. Others that would like to comment on the question? Go ahead, Commissioner Cafalas.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you, colleagues, and thanks for the folks that are participating. In looking at some of the questions in the Q&A and some of the comments, I think it's important that we talk about the behavioral health services and the impact grants that we've put out there. Some of those grants, so we recently approved approximately $2.5 million to go to 29 community-based organizations. And some of those organizations are dealing, some of them are directly to school districts to try to address some of these issues of students with special needs and some of the isolation issues that have come up, because of COVID, how to best address and support those families and those individuals. So there are funds that are going out into the community. We're approving those funds, and hopefully that is helpful. Regarding the behavioral health facility, there's groundbreaking, construction is going to start at the end of this year. It's been delayed. COVID had something to do with that, and a variety of other things related to construction projects. But the behavioral health facility, which was part of the 2018 Behavioral Health Services Initiative will begin construction the end of this year, and it'll be ready to be operational in mid 2023. So I guess the county's role in this is to make sure that these community funds are going on to the community to address these issues, and I believe they are doing that, and that's one way that we're trying to help out here. Maybe Jody, you can help out.
Certainly, Commissioner Cafalas, as the liaison for that group and person who worked very hard to get that initiative passed. The behavioral health funds were not just only to build a facility, but in the 3-bucket approach. We have the bucket of the impact fund, which is what Commissioner Cafalas and I have been mentioning. We just approved last week $2.5 million. It's getting out to the community. We've done that for 3 years, and the metrics and the results we've seen so far have been amazing. And so we've been that's why that grant process was increased from $1 million to $2.5 million. And we know the need is actually and the grants that came in were 4.7 million. So we had to really it was a hard task to choose that with the grant process that we have. Now, with regards to the facility, we're doing something unprecedented here in Larimer County. A lot of people in the state are watching what we're doing. They're trying to learn from what we're doing. We're getting nationally recognized for the work that we're doing, and building this center is going to take a lot of time. It's like we're trying to build the runway, build the plane, and train all the crew at the same time for a maiden voyage we've never done before. And so right now we're training the crew, building the runway and the plane, and we found out that the budget has increased by 20-40%. Construction costs and construction availability has been an amazing challenge that no one else has ever seen. And we think we've overcome those challenges. And so we will, and I think December 8th is when we're looking at the construction group will be there and moving, and it is moving forward, and we have a lot of work happening. So I just want to kind of share that. We're also looking at this facility will hopefully be a kind of exemplar for how to train folks in behavioral health workforce. That's another challenge, is we don't have people trained in some of these areas. There's not enough folks trained in these areas. So we're hoping this will also be a workforce development area, and we will be able to attract really great people from around the country to come in and train and that increase those resources here in the county as well. So it's a really exciting project. And I just want to make sure everybody understands how unprecedented and innovative this approach and this facility will be. And I'm really excited about it, and I hope that you'll follow along. And there's a great link on the website to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. DA Mclaughlin, wanted to give you the opportunity to weigh in on either topic. The new behavioral health facility that is coming out of the ground, in addition to some of those grant funds that are trying to serve our community very well, as well as this employment challenge that direct service providers and educators are faced with. Any thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, the employment challenge is a little outside of the wheelhouse of the DA, unfortunately, but I appreciate the answers from all my colleagues up here. I think those were great and thoughtful answers. I'm very excited about the behavioral health facility and really appreciate Commissioner Shadduck-McNalley and Cafalas' support for that facility. I think it's going to do a lot to serve a population that, again, we also see overrepresented in the criminal justice system, and heading things off before people enter the criminal justice system is, of course, the best way to prevent problems, to prevent crime, to prevent anything else. And so I think the facility is going to be a great service. We have been looking at ways with the county that who we can send there on sentences, at what point in the criminal justice process we can send folks there, and how to best utilize those services. So I think there's been a huge need for that in the community, and I think it's going to be very beneficial when we get that up and running, and we're very supportive of those efforts at the DA's office.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to our next question that has been submitted online, I do want to share a note with, again, our panelists and attendees that certainly this employee shortage has been challenging for all business, whether it's the business of schools, the business of care providers or the business of Main Street. And we certainly want to make sure people understand that government's working alongside private industry in order to really open the door and make it possible for all kinds of people to join into our economy and have success and find that opportunity that fits them. I've been a part of at least one conversation about bus drivers and the fact that here across Larimer County, we've got a shortage. And so we're unable to get kids to school. We're unable to get patients to clinics. We're unable to get people to work. And so joining that interesting creative conversation to really try to understand how can we backfill, how can we make sure that we're able to support people in their efforts to get where they need to go and have economic success in our communities. So just wanted to share that thought and that observation. We've got another great question that came in on Q&A, and so I'll put it out there for our panelists today. But we have an attendee that's wondering, what are your methods for including individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and mental health challenges in the discussions to identify, understand, and solve community challenges such as access to supports, employment, and more? Where is their voice? And wanted to provide the opportunity for all of you to share some thoughts on that. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Well, as we mentioned, we have our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Board that we just formed. And I think that, we're going to really strive to have that voice on that commission. And we really will have, all three commissioners will be the liaison to that board. So we'll be meeting monthly, and that will be really important. We just a couple of weeks ago invited Miss Amazing to come, national award-winning Miss Amazing, to come speak to us at our Board of County Commissioners meeting. And she shared her journey with IDD and autism and things. And I think that that was really powerful and a good reminder. We have community conversations. We go out into the community, and I seek out families and individuals with disabilities and how we can engage them, because sometimes we can't always ask them to come to us. We need to go out and listen to them. And I've toured Foothills Gateway, looking for other listening sessions, so we make sure that we have their stories in our heart, in our mind, as we're making these decisions. Everyone has said this, but I can't stress it enough. The pandemic has really provided a lot of challenges for everyone as we're trying to go forward. But it's really been a great opportunity to magnify the gaps in care and the continuum of care that we need to address, and those needs and where we are falling short are some of the things that maybe we need to address sooner than later. So I feel like going forward, I want to see us not have this kind of net. They talk about the net. We're trying to keep everyone the safety net. Let's make it into a trampoline and let everyone kind of bounce back out of this pandemic, and how we can kind of go into this new future with opportunities and to do things differently and innovatively. And Zoom is one of these ways where we can reach out to folks. And so I'm hoping that we can just make sure that every decision, and with these ARPA funds and all these things that we're trying to change going forward, to make it a more resilient community as we recover. And part of that conversation is how we can make these communities that we're here today to listen to and serve, how we can make them more resilient and help them live independent and fulfilling lives, and how they choose to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I see Commissioner Cafalas would like to weigh in as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ann. And I'm responding to the question that I see in the Q&A from Beth Higgins. I think another example of how we are trying to include people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and folks with behavioral health challenges is, in terms of our behavioral health services, we have a policy council, we have a technical advisory council, but we also have established what I think is a very robust consumer advisory group that is made up of folks with lived experience. So I would offer that as one example of where we're trying to get input from people that are living these issues and dealing with these issues directly. I also think that we've tried to develop relationships with some of the community-based groups that serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, such as the ARC of Larimer County and others. There's a question in there about ABLE accounts. I think we've in the legislature and beyond, we've tried to make sure that people know how to access those accounts to help benefit people who want to get post-secondary education. But the last thing I'll say here is that certainly open to suggestions about how we can do a better job of having community conversations or town hall meetings that are addressing the specific needs of folks in the community with IDD or behavioral health. How do we target those? Where do we do those? So I'm certainly open to suggestions there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Kipp, you'd like to weigh in? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a good question. I just want to reiterate that, we do regular legislative town halls, but we're also always open to meeting with various groups. Actually, this is one of the best events of the year because the best part of it is not hearing from us. It's about hearing from you about what your questions and concerns are. One of the reasons that one of sort of the fundamental value that I've always held, even before I was elected, if I was served on a committee, for instance, we have to hear from the people who we are representing that voice from. And if we don't hear from you, we don't necessarily know what's going on. And so that's really what we need you, and actually you all have great advocacy organizations with you. I mean, ARC is wonderful, Foothills Gateway is wonderful, Summit Stone is wonderful, Spirit Crossing is wonderful. They all tell us usually what is going on with them. I did also want to just address briefly the comment in the chat about the SSI, because that's been brought up at these forums before. My understanding, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but is that that's a federal requirement. And so that's something where we need to make sure that we're being vocal with Congressman Neguse, who's our congressman, or actually we might have more diverse representation in Larimer County after those lines are drawn. So you might have a couple of congressmen to talk to, and our senators, Hickenlooper and Bennett, and please write them and say, you know what? Or call their local offices, say this is an issue for us in the disability community, because if we can't save more than $2,000 and have any kind of savings built up, how does this allow us to lead normal lives? It just doesn't, and that's not okay. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And for those of you that aren't able to see the chat or on the phone, some of the comments that have been coming through are around that challenge that many in our disabled community face of only being able to have a very small amount of savings before then they lose their Social Security benefits, their disability benefits, their health care in many ways. And the fact that there's a conflict when we talk about that from a policy perspective. And Representative Kipp's exactly right. This is absolutely a federal issue. But I appreciate the commenters bringing it up to make sure we're all thinking about it. How do we create equal pay for equal work and tremendous opportunities if there's not a way to actually survive when you're faced with those decisions? Representative Baesnecker wants to share a few thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, thanks, Ann, and I appreciate the discussion and the assets or the access to resources that ARC continues to provide around those ABLE accounts. And this is where I think really cooperation among multiple levels of government is really critical as we work to each move the pieces that we can to ensure a life of dignity for folks who face challenges. I think the other piece that I would want to mention inside of this in regard to Beth's question about including folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, mental health challenges, et cetera. This is where communication with organizations like ART, Spirit, Crossing, Foothills Gateway is critical to our efforts at the state capitol. And that, from a legislative perspective, that looks like including folks in the stakeholder process early and often as we consider legislation that would impact different populations in unique ways. And so that's a commitment I know that folks across the aisle and certainly on my side of the aisle share, making sure that what we do doesn't have unintended consequences at the worst, and at the best, it makes sure that we really do address the challenges that folks in these different communities face. And so that's a vital part of the process. And you have a number of lobbying organizations as well that work at the state capitol to make sure that we keep these issues at the forefront of any discussion, knowing that, again, these communities are not monolithic in nature and the concerns are very different and varied depending upon the bill or the issue we're discussing.
Thank you, Representative. Again, I'm just reflecting on the chat. We've got time for maybe one more question before we provide each of you with an opportunity to share closing comments. But there is a question relative to education for law enforcement in the area of citizens with intellectual or developmental disabilities, and increasing. I'm going to make a leap and assume it's around increasing awareness, thoughtfulness, helping our law enforcement friends be better at their jobs, especially as they interact with members of this community. Thoughts and comments, and maybe we'll start out with DA McLaughlin, and then we'll jump up to Representative Kipp.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So I think there's a growing awareness both in law enforcement and outside that we need to be treating mental health issues, IDD issues very, very differently than historically have been. As DA, I'm the chief law enforcement officer in Larimer County, which means we decide what cases to prosecute, how to prosecute those. I can't tell any law enforcement agency whether or not to arrest someone or how to treat someone, but I can tell them how we're going to follow up on that. And if we're not going to follow up, if we're not going to prosecute a case that we think shouldn't have been arrested or should have been dealt with differently, that will impact changes at those agencies with how they train, how they respond, and what decisions they make on the street. So one of the first things I did when I became district attorney was to dismiss a case that happened outside of Target or Loveland and Target or Walmart in Loveland, where there was a response to a gentleman experiencing a significant mental health crisis. He was arrested for obstructing and some other charges. The elements met the crime, right? We could have prosecuted that case, but we chose not to because that was not the right thing to do. And that was not the response we wanted to encourage from law enforcement on the street. And if we follow through with that and rubber stamp that, like often happens, then that practice is justified on their behalf. So we dismissed that case, and I told that agency why we were doing that and that we expected better. We also have charged several officers that violently arrested someone with dementia in Loveland. And that sends a message, that charge, that's not acceptable behavior, and they need to look at their practices. So while at the DA's office, we can't go into an agency and clean house or institute trainings or do otherwise, we can with our actions, whether that's charging something, not charging something, in our public statements, make an impact on what that culture looks like and set our expectations. And I am setting those expectations a lot higher for what responses need to be or need not to be out on the street for what our follow through is at the DA's office.
Thank you, DA McLaughlin. Representative Kipp, I know you had some comments to share, and then we'll pop over to Commissioner Shadduck-McNalley. Go ahead, Kipp.
Thank you. And this is really a great example of how we all work together in our different roles. So, DA McLaughlin, he's able to do with what he does at his level, at the state level. I just wanted to let you know what we did this year is that we actually passed a law that said that you have to get this training. You have to make sure that people are being trained to deal with people who have these types of issues. And it's not okay that we treat people this way. And it's really just sad and unfortunate that some of these high profile cases are what it takes to bring attention to these issues, but really appreciate that everybody's taken action up and down the line here.
Thank you. Commissioner, thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is a great and important question, and we certainly have some very local examples of why this is so needed. And it has been a big concern of mine in many aspects about what's this, the things that have happened the last couple of years in Larimer County. So I think Representative Kipp is exactly right. This is a great example of how we all work together at a federal, state, and local level to deal with this issue. And because it's, it's the state law to have this training, but also you have to have the budget. So, even though DA McLaughlin has these great programs in the wellness court and an adult diversion, all these other things in the training, that comes with prices and money, and we kind of have the budget, and we kind of help, give DA Mclaughlin some of those money for, programs and things that we need to do, but also, funding co-responder programs and pushing that kind of training and having those resources, because that comes as a price. And so we've been looking at that and trying to, increase resources and expand that program, and hopefully have more of those resources, because right now I don't think we have in Larimer County covered 24/7 of that. There's only a handful of those, and we need to, I feel like, even double it at this point, and have that training and have those co-responders that can respond. And so that's kind of where I'm looking to see how we can all work together, because this is not a one section issue. This is all of us, coming together and representing those values and making sure that folks have the training and the tools that they need to respond to these moments of crisis.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Basenecker or Cafalas, or Commissioner Cafalas, anything else you'd like to share? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ann. What I would add to what Jody said and Gordon and other folks is that one thing we're doing that is very, it's the first time ever in Colorado is establishing a competency court. So you have folks that are dealing with the criminal justice system, and the challenge is that if it's been determined that they're not competent to go to trial and they need restoration services, historically people are sent to the Mental Health Institute in Pueblo, but there are a lot big, there are waiting lists, and it takes a long time. But we have established this competency court, and we're in the process of trying to figure out how do we create more inpatient beds for folks who need restoration services, so they so they can be taken care of properly. That's one thing. I would also mention that earlier I talked about ADA compliance, and Larimer County has an ADA compliance coordinator that looks at these issues throughout the county government system. But we also have an ADA compliance coordinator in the jail, and that's very unique as well. So there is somebody, a deputy, who is trained and provides training to folks when we are dealing with folks who may be incarcerated that have intellectual developmental disabilities and certainly mental health issues. And then finally, we do a lot to divert people from incarceration through our community corrections program and also through our pretrial services. So I would offer those as examples of how we're trying to be, deal with criminal justice issues and law enforcement issues. Certainly the co-responder programs that are out there. That's how, those are some ideas of how we're dealing with these things.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Basenecker, any final comments you'd like to share on this topic before we give you each some closing comment time?
I will keep it brief just to acknowledge the time that it is on the clock and just really emphasize the fact that conversations around equity in regard to criminal justice continue at the state legislature. That's been a huge focus for years. I know Senator Cafalas, now Commissioner Cafalas, has worked on those issues closely, Representative Kipp. Those conversations continue as we really work to drill down into ways that we provide community members with the resources they need in a moment of crisis, and not simply respond with one tool because it's the only tool in front of us. I did want to highlight a piece of legislation that passed last year, and that's SB 21071, which eliminated cash bail for kids and also reduced the bed cap across our state to ensure that when an individual is safe to be placed in a home environment as opposed to incarcerated, that we keep those folks out of the criminal justice system, and that we make sure that the home environment is one that is stable and safe for both the individual and the community. I continue to think that that remains the right approach for folks who are in a moment of crisis, but who can be released safely to the community, knowing that they're not a threat to themselves or others. And I just appreciate the emphasis that DA Mclaughlin and our county commissioners have placed on funding different opportunities for folks who find themselves in a moment of crisis, but perhaps should not be incarcerated as a result. So thank you for all your work there.
Representative, can you share with us that bill number again? That was really fast.
Oh yeah, sorry. It's SB 21071.
Great. So Senate bill session 2021, but the bill number was 071 for any of our
That's
listeners
correct.
that want to check that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So we are just so appreciative of everyone's time today. Would love to provide our speakers with really just 20 seconds to do any final comments before we finish up our conversation today. So DA Mclaughlin, if you'd like to go first, 20 seconds, closing comments.
Yeah, thank you everyone for having us and for paying attention to these issues. I really appreciate it. Our doors are always open and we are trying to improve our services and our knowledge in these areas. We're just 9 months in our administration. We have a lot of work to do. So to the extent folks have ideas, folks want to give input, ideas and just sort of let us know what's going on in your communities or your neck of the woods here in Larimer County that might not be on our radar. We're always interested and want to build those relationships.
Fantastic. Thank you. Representative Kipp.
Just thank you to all the great organizations who put this on today. And thank you to everybody who attended and is listening, because it's your voices that are going to make a difference. So please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know what we need to know to serve you better.
Wonderful. Representative Baisnecker.
I will just echo the same. A thank you to the folks who put this on, and thank you for facilitating our conversation today. And certainly, if there are issues in our community that we can help with, even if we're not the right point of contact for that, we can likely put you in touch with them. Please reach out anytime. These issues are of paramount importance to our entire community. So we look forward to serving you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cafalas.
Thanks, and you've done a great job of moderating and facilitating, so thank you for that. I just want to extend an invitation to folks if they want to reach out to me, to us directly, to see if we could organize some community events that are very targeted towards people, you know, the different community sectors that we're talking about today. I'm certainly very open to that, and I appreciate this opportunity. And also I wanted to add that regarding the question on workforce and you know the workforce shortages in the schools, there is another entity that Ann knows about, and that's the Northern Colorado Health Sector Partnership. And one of the areas that they work on is workforce development in terms of behavioral health, you know, mental health professionals, in terms of early childhood. We're working with the Early Childhood Council of Larimer County. So I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that, trying to address some of these workforce issues. And I believe we're all available. I'll put my cell and my email in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Shadduck-McNalley.
Thank you, Ann, for facilitating this conversation today. I really appreciate your work here today. And thank you to Spirit Crossing Clubhouse and Summit Stone Health Partners, ARC of Larimer County and Foothills Gateway. Really appreciate this opportunity. Like I said, I've attended this before in person and before in the past, and I always appreciate this time to focus and hear from folks in this community and how hear from the issues that impacting them, how important it is for us to hear directly from those residents and folks who this is their daily concerns in their lives. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be in front of you all today and all my colleagues on the screen. Thanks for all being here today. It's really a pleasure to work with all of you and work with this community, because this is an important area that we need to make sure we keep awareness and magnify the concerns and needs in this community. And I just want to tell everybody I'm always open and available by phone, email, and look forward to partnering with you all as we work forward to build resiliency and recovery as we come out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. But before we do our final thank you and goodbye, I did want to reiterate, those of you that were very interested in the Social Security income conversation, as well as ABLE, A-B-L-E, ARC of Larimer County is here to help you understand that resource and understand that tool, and has offered that you can certainly find information about that program on their website. At the same time, if you'd like to reach out to Jessica, the Associate Director at ARC, she would be happy to walk you through what that program looks like and how you can access it. Her email is JSHOUSE, so jshouse@arclc.org. Certainly want to encourage our attendees to check that out and learn more about it. I also want to acknowledge that the DA dropped into the chat some conversation about co-responders and how really Fort Collins, Larimer County, are leading the nation on this concept of mental health, behavioral health specialists co-responding to calls with our law enforcement divisions, and that's a growing resource, and one that, again, I'm so proud of the fact that we're leading the nation in that work here in Larimer County. And then finally, we do want to say thank you. Thank you to our panelists, and especially thank you to our sponsors today. So a shout out to Spirit Crossing Clubhouse, the Arc of Larimer County, and Foothills Gateway for hosting today's event. We are recording this event. We'll make it available on those various websites soon, and hope that you all go out and have a great day. Thank you.